They got to put this money somewhere, and it's going to become very visible. What used to be obscured from our vision will become very visible in the very near future. This is why metals are starting to react, and this is why cryptos will go up too. Anything that's considered anti-dollar or dollar alternative is going to increase in nominal price, in my view, very dramatically in the very near future.
We run on a system that doesn't even use money. It uses currency, credit, and basically a monopoly by a few elitists that basically have huge control in almost all aspects of our lives based on the belief system that we have to have that stuff to be able to live.
They'll attack. If I'm right, as I mentioned earlier, they're going to lose. And that's the thing to keep in mind. Today or last night, a perfect example. I mean, in 10 minutes, 15 minutes, the markets can change completely. But they're losing, and it's a whole different way of gold and silver trading. Even in the bull market years, they never traded like this. It's because the bums have lost control. They're doing what they can, but they don't have the ammo to win.
It is the worst way you can possibly try to paper over a disaster like this. It is absolutely disgusting what they've done to this country just so people can maintain power. You're going to need many, many iterations of helicopter money to keep the illusion going. And again, it's very destructive. It's not stimulus. It's eroding the base, the foundation of the economy. And it works ostensibly until you get inflation. And inflation is the great revealer. And no matter what power you think central banks have, they cannot battle for very long the free market. So when they finally achieve inflation and you see the global bond market revolt, so in other words, prices start to fall and yields start to rise inexorably, that's when this game ends. Because then there's nothing the central banks around the world can do. That's going to be the great reveal. The veil will be ripped and torn asunder. And then they will have to say, okay, I have a choice. I can continue to print money and hyperinflate the economies into oblivion, or I can finally do the ultimate deflationary collapse, which you talk about a great reset of the currency and a resetting and restructuring of debt, which is going to be massively deflationary. And it will wipe out many people for a very, very long time.
The feeling that we're on the cusp of something really historic here, which the last couple of weeks kind of gave us a little bit of a sample of what that just might look like.
There are some fascinating things happening right now on the COMEX market that are changing the entire landscape. A couple of days ago was the largest amount of contracts that have ever stood for delivery on the COMEX market. You're getting the family offices and the high net worth individuals and the big funds. They're pulling money off the exchange. This cripples the commercial bank's ability to naked short, because if you're naked shorting something and no one's buying it, no one wants it, well, yeah, it's easy to do. But if you're naked shorting something and everyone's clamoring for it at a period of time when the demand is far outstripping the available supply, you're going to have a spiritual experience if all of a sudden things start to move against you. And I would argue that's exactly what we saw happening last week as the commercial banks were covering. But I think indeed that we are entering a period of time where you're going to see massive increase in interest from the elite. And the pulling off of the metal off the exchange, to me, is very emblematic of where things are going and what the sophisticated investors' viewpoint is of physical possession of gold right now.
In the past, they say, when you get a financial crisis, everybody rushes for dollars. Not quite true. What they rush for is dollar liquidity. And there's a big difference between having dollar liquidity and owning loads and loads of illiquid dollars. Now, the illiquid dollars are in stocks, they're in US treasuries, and so on. They can easily be liquidated. But think what happens to the securities markets, financial asset values, if you get that sort of selling, and the selling being followed through by the dollar itself being sold, then you can see quite quickly how the pressures are going to be for rising interest rates rather than falling rates. The record level of longs held by the non-reportables was about 158,000 contracts. That was recorded on the 24th of March, literally a day or two after the bottom. So this is smart money. The smart money is in the non-reportable category, and they bought the market right at the bottom of that smash. They are close to record long again, which, if what I say is valid, that this is smart money, tells us that the squeeze is about to enter a new phase.
We do scenario analysis, and our technical team will look at all the different aspects. You know, there's the risk of you have actually at the mine site, so actually recovering and metallurgical. What if the grade's lower than expected? What if there are weather issues, social issues, problems at management? So we look at all those different things and kind of pick the top 10 risks. And then we incorporate those into our scenarios and see, okay, stress test it, you know, from the worst case scenario to the best case, and could it survive? And how can we, you know, structure the stream or royalty to reduce those risks?
Last time gold really moved, which was the year 2000, it moves from a low of what, to $250 to $1,900 over 10 years. So what I was trying to say was not specifically 18 months, but merely that the move was getting started and had some legs. As to the time, I wouldn't pay too much attention to the date. I would pay attention to the level of real interest rates. If you saw the interest rate on the U.S. 10-year Treasury at 7% and you saw the underlying rate of inflation at 4%, in other words, if you were getting 300 basis points in real yield, then exit the gold. I don't think you're going to see that.
It's a rigged game, but that doesn't mean you should sit there like a deer in the headlights and do nothing. If we understand that the game is rigged, and I mean rigged, well, that's our strength. We understand it's rigged, so we play the game. It gives me hope, I think, for a society that is in some terrible form of decay. I mean, you know, look, we got to make a difference. And you're making a difference. I would hope that a lot of your listeners are making a difference. It's got to start with someone. Why doesn't it just start with us? It's that simple. And again, when things get really, really bad, that they're going to offer their solution. They've already had it. The Federal Reserve is determined to kill the dollar in its current form. They already have a completely new 100% digital fiat blockchain-based dollar, which will be replacing the dollar in its current form.
The number of threats that we face as a species are multitude. And what's difficult about so many of these threats is that we, as individuals, don't feel a sense of agency to be able to confront them or to change them, to do anything about them. 3.7 million Americans self-identify as preppers now. I would say there's probably closer to 20 million who are prepping and may not necessarily imagine they're prepping. Is that enough? No, not at all. Because we have built a world, particularly over the past 3 decades, where we're dependent upon grocery stores, takeaway food, restaurants, all of this stuff, on-time delivery. You know, we expect that everything can be brought to us at any time, that we can get fruits and vegetables out of season, that our packages arrive at our doorstep. And what that does, as you pointed out, is it makes us fragile. The more dependent we become on these infrastructures, the more fragile we become.
The problem that is manifesting itself right now, it started with 60 to 65% cumulative of all of the mines across the globe shut down due to COVID. And the refineries that are all located in Switzerland on the border of Italy shut down. And the mints shut down. And the supply chains fragmented. Then there was a little period of a respite that we saw here this summer. A little quiet time, the eye of the hurricane. And as I've been fond of saying, I think the trailing edge of the storm is not too far behind.
The dollar, it's actually been in a 50-year downtrend, and people don't realize that. Ever since 1971, the dollar has just gone down, not straight down, but down, quite a steep downtrend. Now it's rolled over and it's breaking down again, and we think it'll break down to new lows. One thing is the economic uncertainty that's COVID related, and the COVID uncertainty. How long is that going to last? How will it affect jobs, and how's it going to affect my life? And how long are we going to be cooped up, and all that. And like Pam said, I think that's true. Eventually we'll get back to normal. It might be a new normal, but things will settle down. But then if on top of that you have election uncertainty and uproar over the results, or chaos, protests and all that, that's just going to compound the uncertainty, and I think that could not only make the markets volatile, but it could push stocks way, way down. It could shoot gold way up. There's so many things that, depending on the outcome and what happens here just in the next 6 months or so, that we think are going to be, they could sharply move the markets. And you compare it to the last 2 big bull markets that gold has had, which was in the 70s and then in the 2000s. I mean, you're talking many thousands of dollars for the ultimate high in this bull market, and it could take several more years.
Yeah, we're thinking even up to 5 years for the full bull market to develop, like mid-2025, around there. And that's not saying that we're not going to have some nice, good-sized downward corrections, but I would look at those corrections as a good buying area, not to be scared by them.
The manipulators are always going to be trying to manipulate, and they can only do it for so long or do so much before the major trend takes over and drives the price wherever it's going.
For the first time, the mega trend, that's not just a major trend, is turning in gold's favor. And it has a lot of room to go. And it means that gold's going to outperform the stock market and the bond market.
For years.
Yeah, this is like a mega trend.
Systemic risk has not been released. And that is what they're trying to prevent. They're trying to prevent a Lehman moment where Lehman Brothers blows up and then the next morning you wake up and a money market fund has broken the buck. And the next morning when you wake up, there's a Landesbank that you've never even heard of in Germany that's blowing up. And that is kind of the uncontrollable nature of systemic risk that is so frightens central bankers. It's something they've created. But the fact that we have not seen systemic risk erupt, and we'll know it when we see it. Trust me, it's like, you know, dogs and cats falling from the sky. Systemic risk, you know it when you see it. Because again, it's an uncontrolled train wreck. That has not happened. But I look at the financial system as something that is so interconnected that you want to know where the small spark is going to come from. What you're talking about with derivatives book, that's the full unwind. That's Armageddon. That is the end game, period end for the financial system as we know it. And I'm not so sure that this is going to be that black swan.
Google has announced by 2029, what they call the doctrine of singularity, they're going to be fused the human mind with artificial intelligence. In other words, AI is going to basically be running everything in our lives. You wonder why you go get so-called things on your phone, what you say and what you do. And can you say, how does an artificial intelligence creature view human beings? As data bits. They can be erased. Let me punch this button here. You are erased. That can happen. That's going to happen. You're going to wonder why someone's at your door, a cop, because you say the wrong word. I would say this, as you end your life, do you want to go out watching some blabbing head, or would you want to go out maybe in trouble for taking a stand for freedom and for your children? If you care about your grandchildren, your children, you get up off your butts and do something.
And when you have certain counterparties that have offered promissory notes in synthetic form, I think we're going to see a few big players around the world, maybe this year or next year, who won't be able to deliver the requisite gold and silver. The gold can't be found. So, there was a request for 40 tons, and the most some of the parties could come up with is only 5. So there is a global race for physical gold and silver to meet these record deliveries on the COMEX, and the market is running dry of physical.
A switch was flicked probably right after gold recovered after the coronavirus impact was first felt, because when coronavirus in March, when it was just sort of slamming international markets, gold also took a hit, although it was temporary. And then when that started recovering and the market understood, like, man, they're printing money, and gold value is going up. To answer your question, capital is flowing now. And I've really never seen it like this. I'm getting emails from the same stockbroker every day with a financing, probably 4 or 5 a week. So there's lots of financings happening right now.
Back to our big picture, our context of turmoil in the global economic system and insanity in the global financial system. I would not see platinum, palladium, copper, or any other out there in the same way I would look at gold and silver. Gold and silver are monetary metals, and when there's concern about monetary debasement, breaking previous record-breaking levels, those are reasonable safe havens. I didn't even call them investments or speculations. I view gold as my savings vehicle.
When they talk about defunding the police, my answer is absolutely correct. Because police forces in this country, if they're not tied generally to sheriff's departments, which usually have some kind of constitutional and historical basis, are pretty much inventions. They don't have any specific constitutional foundation. The people have the authority constitutionally to take protective actions, but they have been put in this position whereby the vast majority of them have no understanding whatsoever of what their constitutional authority is, and they have no understanding whatsoever of how, if that constitutional authority would be exercised, most of these problems would disappear. Let's go back to the police for one moment. I mean, if you had militia structures properly organized, you would never have a situation where any local politician dared to tell the, quote, police units within the militia to stand down when riots were going on in their communities. I can guarantee you that would never happen. That politician would be out so fast one way or the other his head would spin. The same reason that we have Bolshevism in the streets of this country. It's because we have a certain large segment of the political class that wants to remove the people themselves from direct involvement and direct control of the political landscape.
Welcome, everyone. We are the special guests of Miles Franklin's CEO, Andy Schectman, here at the Miles...
Into the absolute opposite of what an honest monetary system provides. We're getting everything the opposite. So we've got a cashless, totally tracked and traced, every transaction on the blockchain where some unknown entity, being whatever, can overlook everything and say yay or nay. And money isn't freedom anymore. I talked about financial freedom, and that doesn't really exist, because if you're a billionaire in China but your social credit score is nothing, you can't fly, you can't buy, you can't do anything. So brave new world, here we are. It's not coming, we're in it. It's only getting tighter and tighter control. And let me finish with this. A just man disobeys unjust laws. And I'll add on to that for what it means to me. There's natural law and there's man's law. Natural law is what we need to fight for. And that's how the basic construct of the Founding Fathers was.
Bart Chilton, the former commissioner of the CFTC, who... yeah, that's the best part. You don't have to take my word for it or anybody else's. I mean, here's the guy who ran the investigation. I mean, Bart came out and confirmed what so many had alleged. He confirmed that J.P. Morgan took over the Bear Stearns position. You know, he confirmed that he saw stuff that he actually had the law eventually changed to what constitutes manipulation. He thinks under the new standard, J.P. Morgan would have been found guilty. Although we don't really have to speculate, because now J.P. Morgan and their traders have been labeled a criminal enterprise by the Department of Justice.
I saw just the other day the Ohio Police Pension Fund put 5% of their $16 billion fund, $800 million, into gold. And that's just 5%. You had Warren Buffett put Berkshire Hathaway into American Barrick, the largest mining company on the planet. This is just the opening salvo. You're going to see more of this. What if these funds, instead of putting 5%, put 15 or 20% in? That 5% allocation of $800 million is more than the entire open interest on the COMEX right now. So it's not a little bit, but it's only a little bit of one big fund. What happens when a lot of funds start to put more than just a little bit into gold, there'll be nothing left. It is the biggest concern that anyone who's thinking about buying gold should embrace, and that I'm sure of.
The Chinese, they don't need to buy gold. I know that for the very simple reason that they've accumulated all their gold. They haven't told us about it. I reckon they've got about 20,000 tons hidden from us, and that's the state. And bear in mind also that the Chinese people have got another 17,000 tons roughly. So, you've got about 37 to 40,000 tons of gold in China between the state and its people. They don't need to buy gold. They've got all that. But what they want to do is they want to get rid of their dollars. So what do? They buy copper. They buy nickel. They buy zinc. They buy lead. They buy food, like lean hogs. They buy lumber. Up 250% since March the 23rd, when the Fed turned around and said, deflation, forget it, we're going to print until the cows come out. Whatever it takes, we're going to print.
So you've got the U.S. central bank with their playbook flapping in the breeze saying, our playbook is we're going to create currency to unlimited amounts. And you got the Chinese saying, through their actions, we're going to get rid of currency and put it into real solid things.
Correct.
Two completely different approaches to this coming situation.
Correct. You say two different approaches. One has got the problem, the other has got the solution. The US has the problem. Markets eventually undo everything that a central bank does. That is going to happen, and it's going to happen very soon. And the time it will happen will probably be when the S&P starts going down sharply. And it may have started, I don't know, it might have another rise. I'm not guessing on the timing of that at all. All I can tell you is that it is soon. That market is going to turn around. Why? Because the fundamentals underneath the S&P are rubbish.
When it happens, let's just say when it does, it's not going to be pretty. And it's not necessarily the kind of world that any of us would wish for. But it's coming whether we like it or not, because the money is being printed. And if they stop printing the money that they're printing, the whole system collapses on itself. So these guys, if these guys have a mantra, the people who are in charge, if they have a mantra, it's live to play another day, okay? These guys are experts at kicking cans down roads, and they will continue to kick the can down the road. If they run out of road, they'll try to kick the can in the bushes. They will keep trying to kick the can until they come to a brick wall, and then they will not be able to kick the can any further. This will occur. I can't say when it's going to occur, but you see, I don't care, because I know how this story ends, and I'm playing for the end.
I would suggest that we are in sort of the third or fourth inning. But I'll tell you something, Duncan. I also think this game's going to go extra innings.
The dollar's just worthless. It's just paper. It's not backed by anything. What if the Chinese say, yeah, we'll back our currency, 10% or 25% or something. And oh, by the way, we've got 40,000 tons of gold we never told anybody about, that sort of thing. Well, now all of a sudden that's an alternative. And now all of a sudden, that same trade that gets conducted between Brazil and South Africa, they don't use dollars anymore. They use the Chinese currency instead because it's perceived to be safer because it's backed with gold. Now all of a sudden they've got all this less demand for dollars. Less dollars being plowed back into treasuries. This creates a real problem. And a lot of those dollars come sloshing back home, further weakening the currency. And again, you can, as we've been discussing this stuff, I think people can begin to understand how problematic and how chaotic that will be when it happens. And again, the last point of that, and I've mentioned this now a couple times, what really keeps me up at night is this generally isn't a peaceful transition.
Here on the farm, we've literally been in a bubble, all summer. And our stewards and our presidents, all of our staff, boy, everybody is just, we're happy, we're healthy. Look, the cows don't know that anything's going on. The chickens don't know anything is going on. The trees don't know. The tomatoes don't know. And so it's not in our face every day, and we just go about our business, and we're just in this bubble. But boy, when we go to the city or our delivery vehicle, we deliver into the city, And the abject fear in the eyes of these urban customers is palpable, and we don't see anything like that in the countryside. It just doesn't exist. The average city in America has 3 days worth of food. In other words, if you suddenly dropped an iron curtain around the city limits of any city in the U.S., it only has 3 days supply of food in it. We're seeing dryness accelerating in dry areas and wetness accelerating in temperate areas. So with that in mind, I encourage people, if you're footloose and fancy-free, if you can go anywhere, don't go to a dry area. Go to a temperate area.
That is the kind of thing that Russia has been through. A loss of estimates 60 million murdered in one way or another in their so-called civil war, which was a paid insurgency. We've tasted a little bit of that. There's a paid insurgency, as I've written also, in America right now. They're still going across our country, burning everything they can and putting these people in, making them appear as if they are ordinary Americans. All the talk seems to be about a system that would rely more or less on something like blockchain and therefore upon computer power to do all of your transactions. That's very disturbing to me because one of the hallmarks of a sound monetary system, in my opinion, is being able to get the actual value into the hands, into the pockets, into the possession of the people who do the work. It doesn't have to be there all the time, but it needs to have the capability of putting it in their possession upon demand at any time, and that requires a gold system, a gold back system, a gold coin system with silver as well, in order to make that system work well. And it's not going to work well on an electronic system in which you can be turned on or off by a government power at any time, and therefore made a pauper in case you cross the way the powers in the government want you to act.
To acquire gold and silver, just go to libertyandfinance.com. When the main site comes up, click on Bullion Sales. That's libertyandfinance.com, Bullion Sales. You'll see my name, Dunnigan Kaiser, my phone number, and my associate, Kaiser Johnson, his phone number, our email, libertyandfinance@protonmail.com.